All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Good Life Small Business Podcast, and I am honored to be joined today by Trevor Schaben, who is the owner of Thunderhead Brewery here in Kearney, a staple for anyone who lives here or went to school here. And so, Trevor, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pretty honored to be asked to do a podcast.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's just dive in here and get to know a little bit more about you. One of the questions we always ask is, what is a book that you are currently reading or listening to? Listening counts. So, what are you reading or listening to right now?
I'm always reading and listening to books.
Yeah.
Both. Like on the trip back from Oregon, my wife and I were listening to Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
He's one of my favorite sci-fi authors. I do a lot of sci-fi.
Yeah.
And I just finished Dune about 2 weeks ago for the first time. I'd never read it. I didn't think I'd want to read it. It's about a desert. Who wants to read about a desert?
Right.
But man, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a great book. Right now I'm reading Pathfinder.
Okay.
I forget who wrote it. It's the guy that wrote Ender's Game. I can't. Anyway.
That's all right. Cool. Very good. Good.
Just fun books.
Yeah. So how about podcasts? Any, whether it's business, sports, whatever, any kind of podcast you listen to?
I like philosophy podcasts
Yeah.
and stuff. Like as far as there's a DJ that records people who've done spoken word things and turns it into music.
Oh, nice.
Akira the Don, and he has a Meaning Wave. That's pretty fun. I like Jordan Peterson podcast.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
Of course, Joe Rogan kills a lot of time. It's fun to listen to.
Yep. The long ones.
Kind of it.
Interesting.
Those types of things. There's
Yeah.
probably 50 of them I listen to.
Yeah. I got a long list too. I'd probably get to maybe a third of them at that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Very good. So I was interested to sit down with you and talk about this because this is really the first time we've ever met. Like I said, Thunderhead's been here for a long time. So just take some time and tell us your story, vision to reality of kind of how Thunderhead started and what that journey's been like for you.
Sure. Well, I've always wanted to start my own business. When I got out of high school, went to the military, spent a lot of time, about 7 years, doing Air Force stuff, and just daydreaming about how I was going to shape the rest of my life, how I was going to get ahead.
Sure. And
my first thought was, well, I'm going to work for my dad and drive a garbage truck, and I'll work my way up in the garbage business.
Okay.
And I got out of the military, came back, Gothenburg, started driving a garbage truck, and I found out I wasn't very good at it. Like, my mind is wandering all the time.
Right.
I'd miss dumpsters, customers, and somebody would be upset that I didn't pick something up, and they'd come out and start yelling at me, losing their mind, and I'd be kind of laughing. Not kind of, I would laugh. Because I'd just come out of a very intense situation in the military where it wasn't life and death very often, but sometimes it was, and everything was very serious. And this person's losing their mind about something silly to me.
Yeah.
So I just didn't take it seriously enough. But luckily for me, a larger trash company came along and bought my dad's business. Him and his brother had Schaben Sanitation. The name is still going out there somewhere. But,
Right.
So when that got bought, I thought, well, I'm going to shoot my dad an idea. I've been homebrewing for about 9 years, and I thought that would be a fun thing to try. And so I asked him if he'd co-sign a loan for me to get started, and in exchange for it, he could have 50% of it. 50% of nothing to lose, go for it.
Right.
And so that's how the first place got funded. I borrowed $80,000, co-signed by my dad, and spent about 8 years trying to figure out how to pay it back.
Yeah. And where did you start? Did you start here in Kearney?
Yeah.
First location?
About a block south of where we are right now.
Okay.
The Platte Valley, where the Platte Valley Brewery is.
Okay.
That's where we started. When we started there, it was empty, but right before we started renting that building, it was a pet store, and before that, it was like a garage, like a auto body or auto repair place.
Okay. All right.
Took a lot of work.
Yeah. And so what year was that you started?
We opened in '99, so we started working on it in '98.
Okay.
Took about 6 months of working on the building and getting licensed and everything to
Okay.
get open.
Okay. And you had the big brew tanks. My terminology is not going to be great here, but you had everything right there in the
We
building.
had the biggest soup pot you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's a really small brewery.
Yeah.
As far as breweries go, I think I'm 100% sure we were the smallest brewery in the country when we opened. And that was just because I'd never worked in a brewery before, I'd never run a brewery before. Like I said, I was in the military and then drove a garbage truck. I didn't know anything about food. I had a lot of ideas about how everything is supposed to work.
Right.
And so I just applied those and spent, a few years figuring out how wrong I was about everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that size literally was too small. Like the way that the tax code's set up and how much labor it takes and all that sort of stuff. I could not figure out a way for that to both pay me and repay my loans and pay all my taxes and everything.
Right.
So we started out in a grow or die situation that we didn't realize for about 6 months.
Got it.
That's how
Ignorance
it
is
got
bliss
started.
sometimes, right?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have started it if I knew everything.
Yeah.
I've been like, wow, that's going to be terrible.
Right.
Don't do it.
Yeah. So when I called Trevor to set this up, I said, you guys have been brewing beer before it was cool. Now there's breweries all over. People are doing microbrews and things like that. But when you got started, it wasn't as big of a thing as it is right now.
Sure.
And so you said you've done it in the past. It was just like, well, I think I can make a go of this. Did you start out with, as far as a restaurant with food and things like that, or was it just a brewery?
No, it was just a brewery. We had seating for 8. We were brewing 31-gallon batches, which is like 2 kegs.
Okay.
It takes about 16 hours of labor to do a batch. So, I don't know. Now looking back on it, it's kind of obvious to me, but yeah, that's how that started. And there was no restaurant or anything. The restaurant and the brewery function as way more different entities than you would think. You would think they're both kind of making food,
Right.
but that legally they're completely different, and the way the numbers work in the business are completely different. So you kind of have to learn how to do them each separately, and one can support the other one. Within a year later, we moved over here and got this restaurant.
Sure.
One can support the other one, and one can pull the other one down too. So you kind of need them both to succeed to eventually to be doing good. Yeah, that's how it started.
Cool. And how many brews did you start? How many different beers were you doing when you were over at the old location?
We were brewing 9 times a week, so we brewed 9 beers a week.
Okay.
And I didn't make the same beer. May have maybe made the same type of beer, but I didn't make the same recipe twice for 6 months. And during that period, I was having a problem with yeast. I didn't know it was a yeast problem. I thought it was a bacterial problem. Where I ended up dumping about 56 batches in that first 6 months, which during a time when you couldn't afford to dump one. But I knew that if I couldn't afford to dump one and it had a defect, then I really, really couldn't afford to sell it.
Right.
So, we just bit the bullet, and there for a while we were dumping like 4 batches a week, maybe 5. It was terrible, but got it figured out. It ended up being a simple thing. Of course, I tried to fix it every week. I think I figured out what was causing the problem, and I replaced that or changed the process and changed the way I was doing the thing. And the next week, eventually one day I'd walk in the building and I'd take 1 foot in the building and I could smell the thing. It was autolyzed yeast, which if I'd have known it was autolyzed yeast, that'd have got me in the right direction. But I thought it was some kind of bacterial infection because I'm brewing beer in an alley.
Right.
Controls were not awesome.
Sure.
But I forgot what the question was.
Yeah, no, that's
Got
good.
on it.
That's good.
What
Live and
was
learn.
there?
Live and learn. So you've been doing this for a while. What's your favorite part about being a small business owner?
I like deciding how things are going to work. I screw stuff up as much as everybody else does, but to me, it's a lot more annoying when someone else is screwing something up and I can kind of see it and I'm like, we shouldn't do it that way. Then at the other hand, it's kind of nice when you're not responsible for screwing it up. If you are an employee,
Right.
But I don't mind taking the responsibility, and if it's a mistake, I'll spend the money and fix it or whatever. I like being in control of that.
Yeah. Very cool. So is this what you thought it would be when you got started? When you had the guts to ask your dad for co-sign on a loan and get started?
I was 90% sure that within 10 years I would have displaced Anheuser-Busch as the king of beers.
Yeah.
I just knew it was going to be a rocket ship ride to the great wealth and stardom. So it's not exactly what I imagined,
Right.
But it is pretty great. I like it. It's not like I imagined. Even last year, well, I imagined this year looking different, and
Right.
it's turned out,
Right.
And the year before, the same way when we had the flood, didn't know what to make of how that was going to work out. Luckily, the flood didn't really hit us. It hit a lot of the other businesses in town that do a lot of the same things we do. So
Sure.
for us, it was kind of a windfall for a few months while they were closed, rebuilding their stuff. But, you never know when it's going to be you. You just got to make hay when the sun shines.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and that's a good segue into the next question that I've got. So COVID has impacted businesses all over, and it's impacted them in different ways. You've got the type of business where, it really helps to have people in your restaurant or in your bar that are here. But what I want to kind of focus on is what's something that you've taken out of COVID, adjustments that you guys have made, something you've done differently in your business that maybe you were forced to do it, but going forward, it's something that you're going to take forward and your business will be better because of it.
Okay. Well, this is going to start out sounding like a negative thing, but it's going to turn around.
Okay. All right.
So, you can kind of tell for a month that things were kind of looking bad. They were looking bad. We just pretty much went whistling past the graveyard, like, nah, it's gonna turn around. It's gonna be fine. And then the day finally came where the directed health measures were don't serve food, don't serve drinks in your business. And our tap room or our pub here in Kearney is about 80% of our revenue. And then the other 20, somewhere in there, and the rest of the revenue from the brewery comes from selling beer to other places that are doing this.
Right.
So we lost both kind of like that day. Keg beer sales dropped to pretty much zero and stayed that way for a couple of months back later on. But so, we did the same thing everybody else had to do. Sit down at the kitchen table, figure out what we can go forward with, what we're going to have to do to change. At the time, we were getting ready to buy a building in Axtell, where the brewery is.
Okay.
So we had saved up the down payment for it, and we decided we can't buy that.
Right.
We're going to need this money going forward. We've got certain employees that they're not going to be easy to replace, so we're just going to pay them whether we can find work for them to do or not.
Right.
And of course, we'll pay ourselves so we can make our house payments and whatnot.
Right.
And make the bank payments, and we'll just see how long that lasts. It looked like we could probably hold out for a year or so and see what happened. So that's what we decided to do. We came in the brewery the next day. We only had hours for maybe 25% of our kitchen guys. We were still doing carry out and drive up, and took some of the brewery people and had them start doing delivery. So we did a little bit of research, and we found out that a year before, law had been passed in Nebraska allowing delivery of beer. And we didn't even know about it.
Really?
Like, well, we're going to start delivering beer and pizza then. So, me and my son and our main brewer now started delivering pizzas. And then also, about the same day, the governor did a measure where you could have a mixed drink to go out of the building.
Right.
It could had to be in a sealed container. It didn't have to be labeled, and it could be a mixed drink. Like we've been selling beer to go forever.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd also been selling a mixed drink called Thunder Punch that we mix up and put in kegs for about 20 years. And for 20 years, people have been asking us to buy it to go. We can never sell it to go.
Right.
It's a mixed drink.
Right.
Well, that day we could sell it to go. So I shot my lawyer an email saying, this is the thing, I posted attached the thing from the governor and said, I'm reading this as I can sell Thunder Punch to go now. We're going to start doing it tomorrow. I'm not asking if you interpret it the same way. I just want you to be in the loop as we're going to do it. He's like, all right, yeah, looks good. So we did a post on Facebook, and man, it went crazy.
Yeah.
We got, I don't know, 100 shares. We had 50,000 views. It was like the wildly most popular thing we've ever posted.
Yep.
And the next day, we had a line out the door. We couldn't keep up. We rehired all the kitchen people that we had laid off the day before.
Right.
Got them to come back to work, and then a lot of the servers, any server or anybody who wanted to work, as many hours as they wanted to work, they could work. But about half of them didn't want to come back to work,
Right.
which is totally cool. I understand that.
Yeah.
The other half, we trained them how to bartend. We mostly trained them how to mix Thunder Punch.
Right. Yeah.
And we sold out of, we would normally go through about 800 growlers, glass containers, in about 8 months' time, about 100 a month. And we'd get, that day we went through, I don't know, 400. And the next day we went through another 400, and we were out. We went around and bought all the glass jars we could find. In Kearney, went to Menards and Walmart and got all the quart jars and brought them back and just started filling them with Thunder Punch. And we sold it as fast as we could make it. Luckily, it's basically just pop and whiskey. We make the pop for it.
Yeah.
And so we could make a batch of it in a day. Unlike beer, where if that happened with beer, it'd take us 6-8 weeks to start catching up. With this, we could start catching up the next day. Started ordering glass. We started expediting it. Places that couldn't get us labeled growlers quick enough, we said, "Can you send us blank ones?" Yes. All right, send them tomorrow. We'll do it. Yeah. Then one order I did, they accidentally shipped it to the Omaha tap room, which I don't know the Omaha tap rooms, but they still have the name Thunderhead on them.
Okay.
So, I can understand why they might have done that, but I didn't notice it until the morning we needed them. And they came in that morning, like, oh my gosh. So out there in the truck and broke down. So that's how that was going. And to this day, we can still sell Thunder Punch as a mixed drink to go. But after seeing how much demand there was for it, we decided that we needed to figure out a way that it wouldn't be a mixed drink, where we weren't putting somebody else's branded stuff into our branded pop and making some kind of composite brand that would be legally messy to grow, or downright illegal if the governor changed his mind, or if we wanted to sell it to a third party. If another bar wanted to sell it, we wouldn't be able to sell it to them unless we had made it all ourselves. So I knew that there was a piece of equipment out on the market that was super expensive, but it would let us make a seltzer, and decided that it was probably time to pull the trigger on that. So and that's supposed to arrive this week, so we'll see how that goes.
So is that something you would have ever done if this wouldn't happen?
Maybe. It'd always been in the back of my head. I wanted to do it, but I knew that piece of equipment existed for over a year now. And I contacted them to price it, and when I saw how much it was, I thought, we'll keep mixing it. It's right. So I probably wouldn't have. But then, about the same time, maybe even a month before or a month after, I'm not sure, right in there. It was right after, it was about a week after this thing had started. I got an email from the company and they said, would you like to rent it for a week and just see how it works? I'm like, absolutely. So I got signed up to rent it, and it took them like a month or so to send it to me.
Yeah.
And we got it for 5 days, and we'd scaled up so that, on day one, we had that machine running 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
We ran it for, I planned on running it for 3 straight days, and then I'd have 2 days of buffer for anything that was going on, because I didn't know how any of it was going to work.
Sure.
And it ran really smooth, it was slick, it worked way better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
It was our first attempt at making a seltzer, so I mean, it wasn't exactly like I wanted, but it was a hell of a lot closer than I envisioned that it was going to be.
Right.
And I thought if we could sell all of that, we made 3,000 gallons of it. So I figured if we could sell all of it in 5 or 6 weeks, then it'd be a success. And it ended up being about 30,000 cans, canned it, and we sold it to our tap rooms in Omaha and here. And then a bunch of retailers wanted to pick it up, so we sent it to them, and we had all of it spoken for or out of the building within 10 days. Like, okay, we're gonna do this.
Right.
So that turned into that.
Yeah.
And also, we're not doing pizza delivery anymore because we all went back to work. But and you can't really hire somebody to do it because we don't do enough of it. But I think it is probably the future. I think it's going to happen. Now we know how it works, the money mechanisms of how to be profitable. And so, like when the time comes to start doing delivery again, I think it'll be, I don't know, it's less daunting,
Sure,
easier to get into.
Right. Kind of have an idea what's going on.
Yeah, it's like a good idea in your back pocket.
Sure. Awesome. So, going off of that too, and this in more, not necessarily maybe code related, but in a general sense, how important is it as a small business owner to be flexible and to be willing to change and to be willing to adapt to whether it's a new service, a new product, financial situations? How important is that to be willing to change and able to make those changes when you need to?
Well, if you're not a legacy business, then that's your whole job. That's because every day you're throwing spaghetti against the wall, and you can't spend too much money on any one of those strands. But when one sticks, you double down on it, and then maybe double down on it again in a slightly different way and see if that's better. But you don't ever want to try something where when it doesn't work, because it's not going to work statistically, then it wipes out everything. So,
right.
You just do a little here and there, and when you get something, go hard in that direction.
Right. Awesome. So, someone's coming to you and they say, Trevor, thinking about starting a small business, whether it's, no matter what it is, they're starting a small business, what advice would you give to them of, okay, here's maybe something you should think about first, or here's my advice to you as you get into this?
Get an accountant. Don't try to do your own taxes.
Yeah.
I did. I tried to do my own taxes for like the first year or so. Like, there's a lot more taxes than you think there are.
Yeah.
Especially if you've never been in a business, you've never run a business. You would think that there's just income tax because, well, other than sales tax, the stuff you're used to seeing.
Right.
You start running a business and you find out that there's like 10 times more taxes than you thought.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are unaware of one, it doesn't matter. They will find out, and you'll get a very polite, pleasant letter, followed by another very polite, pleasant letter. Eventually, you'll get a very polite and pleasant person at your door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they can be polite and friendly because they carry a big hammer. So just do yourself a huge favor and get an account.
Yeah. That is sound advice.
You can't afford it, but you got to do it anyway.
Right. Yeah. That's sound advice. When it comes to like quarterly or anything that has to do with payroll, that stuff just makes my stomach turn. I don't want to even deal with it. So
When we started doing payroll 20 years ago. It was before QuickBooks, or before I was aware of it.
Right.
And you got this chart from the state. You had to follow through it and figure out like what somebody was making and figure out what their tax rate would be for every freaking employee.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. Anyway, yeah, QuickBooks is pretty good, but you're still getting an account.
Right.
Yeah.
Get an account. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Is there anything that you just want to let everyone know? Things you got coming up, specials, anything that you just want to let everybody know about?
Well, we've run I think maybe not, but we've run the rest of the entire state out of Thunder Punch. Everybody's been out for about 3 weeks now before. And the Thunder Punch spigot is going to be turned wide open here about Friday, maybe Monday next week.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
Yeah, if you haven't tried Thunder Punch, try Thunder Punch.
Okay.
That spaghetti stuck to the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Trevor, I really appreciate it.
Hey.
Thanks a lot for your time.
It's really nice talking to you.
You bet.